Hello everybody, this is Nick from Creation Army. Thanks for your interest in my template SABER logo reveals, and I'm doing this video tutorial today to walk you through some of the steps of making this template work for you with your own taglines and logos. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's not as straightforward as some of my other templates where you can really literally just drag and drop and change colors on the fly. This one involves the sort of a process of auto tracing that you'll have to become familiar with to make it work for you. So let's back up a little bit in time here and let's go to one of these tagline scenes. I've made 3 tagline scenes by default, but you can have just one or more if you want. So let's go into this tagline reveal scene 1 and change the word graphics out to something else. So I use the SABER effect heavily in this template to get this hot glow around the letters, and I get the the draw on effect when they come in, especially in the very last comp when the word video hive is revealed here. And the way I do that is by using SABER, and if you haven't done so already, go to videocopilot.net and you'll see a link to the new SABER plugin. It's 100% free, works with all versions of After Effects, and it's easy to use, easy to install, and light on the video card. So install this first. So let's go into tagline reveal scene 1 and let's change out the word graphics to something else. Here's how you do it. Double click on tagline reveal scene and we'll be in the scene that has the camera, but it still deals with a couple of pre-comps packed into this. Tagline right on is what we're going to jump into. I'll double click that pre-comp. Now we'll see 5 layers. And this comp just does this kind of thing where the tracking of the letters, if I jump down to a smaller res it'll go faster, tracking of the letters changes from something wide to something that narrows down and the letters come together. Meanwhile, the SABER effect is following the letters perfectly. In order to change that, we're going to jump into one more pre-comp called tagline source 1. This, of course, is the source text. So we're in our source text pre-comp, and of course we've got the word graphics here, and the font is a free font from Font Squirrel called Furor, but you can change it to whatever you want. Of course, we've got the word graphics here, and you can see these 2 keyframes. If you hit U on this layer, you can see the 2 keyframes which bring the tracking amount from 111 over the course of 2 seconds down to 0. So the word kind of does this. You can move these keyframes if you want. Just keep in mind it only takes about 2 seconds, and then nothing happens after that for the next 8 seconds, all the way out to 10. So if you look at the pre-comp that tagline source rests in, it's hidden for now, and there's 4 other SABER layers above that. These are just the simple outlines, outlines that are behind, some outlines that are in front, inners and outers, and they're all labeled that way. So I'm going to solo and reveal tagline source, which of course does this over the course of 2 seconds. And there's a little marker on here that says use auto trace to create a contour. That's what we're going to do. That's the basic method for creating all of our SABER layers. I'm going to take this pre-comp, and remember, I'm going to change the text to something else. There's our new text. Now it tracks that way. So in this pre-comp right here, it says something, and what I'm going to do is I want to make individual masks for every one of these letter shapes, including the motion of negative tracking. And to do that, I'm going to select it. I'm going to come up to layer, come all the way down, almost all the way down to where it says auto trace. I'll hit auto trace and make sure that your work area is at least 3 seconds right here, because we are going to actually auto trace the work area. Go ahead and click work area. If you hit preview, you'll see that some masks actually start to appear, and what we're going to auto trace is the alpha of the layer. And you can use whatever settings you want. These settings worked for me just fine. And once you hit OK, you're going to give your computer a little bit of time and you'll see it think. And what it's doing right now is it's going through frame by frame along the timeline and it is auto tracing or creating a mask movement for every frame in your timeline, all the way up to, in this case, the 3-second mark. And it'll create a layer right here, which I'll turn fuchsia for now so we can see it. It says auto trace tagline source 1. You can change this to whatever you want. In this case, I changed it to the word SABER. Auto trace tagline source yada yada. This might be the wrong number when you open the template, but that's okay. It's just a name. You can change it to whatever you want. So I'll change it like this. And there's our new name. If you hit U on the keyboard on this new layer, you'll see that it has tons of masks and tons of movement for each mask, tons of keyframes, individual hold keyframes. So auto trace is a great tool for us to use in this project so that After Effects can automatically create all of these keyframes to follow the movement of this pre-comp tagline source. So after that's done, I'm going to fold up the layer and we're going to look at one of these orange layers or one of these blue layers. These all have the SABER effect, as you can see here in the effect panel, but each SABER effect is slightly different. So I recommend keeping these in your template but just hiding them. I'm going to take this first effect, I'm going to hit E, click SABER, and I'll copy with Command C or Control C. Come back up to my new, this is my new auto trace here, which I'll solo, and I'll paste the effect onto it. So now it has the SABER effect working on those new masks. And it looks like I'm getting some weird extra letters or extra fragments floating around on the outside. So you might have to hit M, and you might have to actually expose your masks and go and find those, and maybe delete them. In this case, this is mask 11. And if you touch this one out here, you can see that it's mask 12. These just might have to be deleted by just, selecting them like this and hitting delete. But all in all, that's basically how this pre-comp works. So once you're done there, then you can name it, it's supposed to be rear 2. That's where I borrowed the effect from. So I'll type the rear 2 right there. Now I'm going to duplicate this so that we can make rear. So I'll duplicate this whole layer with Control D or Command D, and I'll just name it rear. And I'm gonna hit E, and I'll get rid of the SABER effect because I want to borrow it from this layer. So I'll hit Command C on this layer's SABER, and I'll come up to here and paste. And that's going to paste the entire SABER effect, including expressions, by the way. If you hit double E, you'll see that the color is driven by the color controller in the render comp by some of these color numbers, which you can see up here in the top left or here. If you change these colors, you'll change the outline colors throughout the comp. Back over here to right on. So now we have 2 SABER layers, and these are your rears. I'm going to duplicate one more time. I'll change the color to something else, cyan. And I'm going to this time borrow the SABER effect from outer. So I'll copy it and then I'll paste it. I'm going to change the name. Hit E, get rid of the SABER effect that's already on there. Paste. And there's my blue energy cloud. And I'm going to duplicate this one more time and I'm going to call it inner, correspond with this blue layer called inner. I'm going to remove the SABER effect. I'll come down to this inner and I'll borrow by copying and pasting this new SABER effect on here. So now you've got your new text. So it's a bit of a process. You do have to go through and copy and paste and borrow a lot of the effects that are on the existing layers in the template and apply them to your new outlined or auto-traced tagline sources to get your new effect. So now we have our new text coming in that is outlined and drawn on with SABER. Also, remember to turn on motion blur for each one of these layers and to make them 3D, to turn on the 3D switch. You'll notice that the ones that come with the template already have motion blur and 3D applied. Also, there are some blending modes to be aware of. The very top one here, inner, is add. Outer is also add. and the bottom two, or the rears, are hard light. So if you duplicate or copy the effects, make sure that you turn on motion blur, the 3D switch, and change these blending modes so that they coincide with the template. It looks really hot and white here, but when we go back over into tagline reveal source, then you're going to get something that is going to look like the original template. So that's how you take care of some of the taglines. Oh, also, the reason that it looks hot and white here, but in this scene it looks red and dull, is I forgot one thing, and that is to not only turn on your 3D switch, but when you turn on your 3D switch on all these layers, be aware that by default After Effects is going to make this layer susceptible to light. It's going to make it accept lights, and we want to turn that ability off so that in this scene your 3D layer looks hot and white. So to do that, after you turn on the 3D switch, hit AA really fast, and right here your third or fourth option down is called accepts lights. You want to turn that to off. Now you'll be able to see the hot white in the previous comp that it's contained within. You want to do that for all three or all four of these SABER auto trace layers that you make. In this case, I'm going to select 3 of them in a row, hit AA, and I'm going to hit off. And all 3 or all 4 now do not accept lights. Let's go ahead and fold everything up. These are my new SABER auto trace layers right here, and they do not accept lights. And when we go back into our tagline reveal scene, now they're hot and white like they should be. And they're not affected by any comp lights, even though they're 3D layers. Okay, so now let's talk about the logo tagline text reveal, except rather than revealing text, we're going to be revealing all of the components that make up your logo. Of course, in the example provided, the logo being outlined is the Video Hive logo, which is made up this dark rectangle, the bees, and then eventually the text gets written on as well. The text write-on is exactly the same method as what we did in the tagline text reveals, so I'm not going to focus on that in this pre-comp, but what I will focus on is how to bring in your logo in the same method that occurs in the demo and the way that the template opens up for you. So don't delete any of these layers, because again it's going to be the same method where we're actually borrowing the SABER effect from all of these auto traced layers. So we're actually going to keep all of this stuff for now. It might benefit you to duplicate this entire comp from the project panel and make your own, so that you always have a copy of the SABER settings. So let's back up in time a little bit, and I'll solo these rounded rectangle pieces, these layers. As you can see from the very beginning, this red trail goes around the rounded rectangle that makes up the Video Hive logo. So what I have here is this rounded rectangle, which is an AI file, and going around a mask on this layer, rounded rectangle inside. This layer right here is a SABER effect, and it's and you can see I actually have a layer mask on there. So it might be important for you to open up Adobe Illustrator or some kind of vector editing program where you can bring in your logo as layers. You want to bring in stacked versions, whatever might be in the rear or bottom of your logo would have to be brought in place here, so that it gets drawn on first, and then other items that are in front get drawn on later in time. As you can see, the step of the layers here, there's a bit of a delay in everything being drawn on. If I expose rounded rectangle 1, this is just an almost identical layer, same mask, but slightly different SABER effect for that hot red line. Rounded rectangle 2 is just slightly behind it with a slightly longer line and a larger glow. So once you get to another part of your logo, for instance, something like the body outlines of the bees. Again, I have you can see that this body outlines layer 12 is an Adobe Illustrator file, but there are no paths here, there are no masks, there's no vector, in other words, showing here. So how do these layers above it draw the saber onto there? Well, because of this label right here, as you can see, it's you have to do it with the auto trace feature in After Effects. So I'm going to do that, select your, in this case I'll choose body outlines, which is the bees bodies, and I'm going to select this layer, go up to the layer menu and come down to auto trace. When we were doing the tagline text reveals earlier, we did a work area so that the auto trace would go down the timeline and auto trace frame after frame because the text was moving. But in this case, the body outlines layer, it isn't actually moving at all. So we really only need to auto trace this one frame, and you can see the masks have already appeared here. You may need to tweak some of these values so that you get all your masks, and just make sure you're applying to a new layer. When you're applying this whole trace to a new layer, you'll get an auto trace layer, and that's basically what this layer 11 is. If I load this, you can see that it is the body outlines of the bees, and the saber effect goes along those body contours. So once you get your logo layer auto traced, you can touch this layer 11 and you can hit E to see the saber effect, or you can see it up here in the effect controls panel, and you can copy with Command C or Control C that entire effect, and wherever your new auto trace layer is, for instance, if I go up to layer, auto trace, and hit OK, your new auto trace layer is going to appear at the very top of your layer stack. So I'm just going to bring it back down to here, and then I would just paste the effect onto it. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But that's the process. Select your Illustrator file, do an auto trace of just one frame, and you'll receive a new auto trace layer, which probably will appear at the top of your stack. Just bring it right down to here and copy and paste this saber effect. You can duplicate the layer, and this second saber layer, which is the inside of the bees bodies, the saber effect will need to be applied to that new duplicate. So that is the process throughout, and that goes exactly the same for any and all of these other layers that make up the bee that we can see from the demo. If I hide the bee, there it is. So the bee's bodies are being outlined by this nice yellow fiery line, and the inside of their bodies are being drawn by this thicker white yellow line. And all of these effects can be applied to your own personal logo when you bring it in. You'll also see down near the bottom, you'll see a layer called Rear Glow. I created this to live behind the Video Hive logo and give it a little bit extra glow. All it is a simple layer with a circular mask, and the saber effect is applied to it. And then of course we have the Video Hive text layer, which I believe is this one. Oh no, that's just rays. So anyway, like I said before, making your text, this at the very top, these are our text layers. This is the same technique as the tagline text. So you can bring in all of your Illustrator files, use the auto tracing method, and then just copy and paste the saber effects from these included layers. Once you're all done, you can just hide all of these layers and you'll have your logo revealed here using Saber. The other important thing to note is that these layers are 3D they do have the 3D switch enabled so that the logo reacts to the camera later on in your final comp. And if I hit AA on one of those layers, accepts lights is turned off. So make sure you turn off accept lights for every one of these 3D layers. That way everything will look the way it should look in your final composition. So that just about covers it. Please contact me if there are any other questions, but I really think that once you go through the tagline right on process a couple of times, you should have the process down. The auto tracing, the copying of the SABER effect, and then making sure that the layer is 3D and does not accept lights. And anyway, thank you for your interest in the template. Thanks for buying, and I hope it works out really well for you. This has been Nick with Creation Army. Take care.